Hi, listeners. It's Cas. I just want to bring you the content warnings for this episode. So, those include discussions and passing mentions of, and are not limited to, things such as rape and sexual assault, marital abuse, physical abuse, rape culture, disease, body horror, bodily invasion, vomiting, alpha, beta, omega, and its related dynamics, outing, racism, fatphobia, ableism, sexism, and misogyny, J.K. Rowling and the antisemitism, fascist ideology, eugenics, and gender essentialism present in Harry Potter. If you are good to go with all of those, enjoy the rest of the episode. If this episode isn't one for you, it's never worth hurting yourself or making yourself uncomfortable to enjoy a podcast or sit and bear through anything. So, go do something nice for yourself. Thank you so much for stopping in, and I hope we catch you again next week. Bye! I heard you say that was the biggest shit you've seen in a very long time.
Oh my god, it was shaped like a dick!
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Author's Note.
Hi.
You just interrupted me right off the bat.
I sure
Can you believe this?
Yeah.
We've fallen into absolute chaos.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me.
What's the subtitle of our podcast?
Don't listen.
Yeah. I feel like there are a lot of people who don't know that that's a reference. I feel like I should rephrase. I think there are a fair number of people who don't realize that that's a reference to...
Don't read?
Yeah.
That's really weird. Wow, I'm old.
We're of a certain age that we experience that, but that's not really a commonplace thing.
I know, and maybe it should be. Maybe.
I think it really should be. The thing that I have seen that has sort of taken its place is Dead Dove Don't Open.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate. I'm like scrolling through tags and it's like Dead Dove Don't Open, and I'm like, oh.
I also love in Fire Emblem fic, people tag a lot of stuff as no better we die like Glenn, which I think is really funny.
Rest in peace, Glenn.
R.I.P.
So this week we're gonna do a little bit of, let's call it a half and half, maybe.
Yeah.
Our topic is a little bit it's a little narrower than we anticipated, but there's still enough to say. But Teese and I also happen to have like synced up our beautiful media consumption this week. And there's some exciting stuff to talk about that we just want to, share and have a moment with you guys. So consider this like half a coffeehouse episode and half a regular episode.
Maybe
I suppose
we should, for people who aren't interested in the coffeehouse chitchat, which why wouldn't you be? But maybe we should have a timestamp saying like, hey, if you don't want to hear us chit chat and just get to the info, just skip to here. Like,
yeah, I'll put it in the show notes below. Let's start with the first movie that we both saw.
Yeah.
And we didn't see it together. I wish we had.
That'd be really fun.
We both saw Lamb, which came out on the 8th here in the United States. And Teese, how do you feel about Lamb? Or would you like to sum up what Lamb is?
Lamb is a movie that takes place in Iceland. It is about a couple who own... Are they sheep? Are they rams? What are they?
They're sheep.
They're sheep?
Okay, so they're sheep. Rams are male sheep and ewes are female sheep.
Oh, did not know that. So,
yeah.
It's a sheep farm. And one of the ewes give birth to a half baby sheep lamb, half human, and they immediately take her in and raise her as a human baby, despite her having a little baby lamb head and a little baby leg hoof. Lamb leg hoof. Man, car, hook, door, hand, lamb, head, hook, hoof, leg.
Lamb, head, hoof, shotgun, trigger.
But it is about the family, this new blended family, and just what kind of goes on together. And I mean, it was kind of billed as a horror film here in the States, but I don't really think it was considered a horror film, truth be told.
Agreed.
I mean, there are suspense elements in it, but there's suspense elements in a lot of stuff. I know you and I talk about a lot how does something become horror when horror wasn't really set up as a genre yet, or it wasn't the intended genre? Like, can anything be looked at under the lens of horror, you know?
Yeah.
So I think Lamb is definitely one of those movies that kind of falls into that trap of, well, as especially like as Americans, I feel like we're not susceptible to kind of magical realism unless it is sci-fi or horror. So when you have something that's just plain weird but isn't necessarily a horror movie, we kind of just shove a circle into a square into a round hole, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. So suspense slice of life is what I would call Lamb. You know?
Yeah. It's a very introspective movie, and it is. I think if anything, probably the horror label comes obviously from those end moments of the movie, because there is some alarming imagery, and there is these moments of this sort of undercurrent of generalized anxiety, maybe I would say, more than anything that the characters experience. But the movie is incredibly quiet. I want to say the entire first half, there's only like 3 lines of dialogue, and the movie is in Icelandic. So, you know, if you don't speak Icelandic, you will have to read subtitles. But it's really, really beautiful. And I was continually stunned by the emotion that they were able to project onto these sheets.
Yes.
When they were filming. Just, because it's just an animal.
Yeah.
It's just an animal, but the way that they are filmed and captured really evokes all this sense of dread and fury and anger and resentment in really beautiful ways.
You know what else? I actually really enjoyed the ambient sound that was used throughout the whole entire movie. I thought that really made a big difference in the scenes that were supposed to be quiet versus the scenes that were were supposed to be suspenseful. I thought that was done really well.
You really hear their breathing a lot throughout the film. Like, that gets ticked up. And I noticed it in moments where it's like, it's Noomi Rapace just standing there in their kitchen or whatever, and you hear every shuffle of her clothing across the microphone. It's just like, oh, there's some. Also, the little lamb child. Perfect.
We love
incredible.
Her.
Beautiful. She's so good.
She's just a baby.
The little scene where she's just dancing with them, or she's just sitting there and she's kind of bobbing her little arms up and down. I mean, she moves like a toddler. She moves exactly like a human toddler, and it's just, I want to protect her.
I know, and safe. Even in the scene where they were dancing, and her mom's like, "You want to dance?" She's like, "No," and then she still does it anyway, and she's still excited that she's doing it. I think it's just so. Oh. I really love
the moment where she picks the cat up and sits at the table with it.
She gives her dad breakfast.
Yeah.
Can't believe that we've become lamb stans.
I'm a lamb stan. Well, you also ended up then finding the description for a movie by that same director that sounds incredible. Yeah.
His first movie is about a god that works at a Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm like, fuck yeah. I want to watch it, but apparently it's not online with English subtitles anywhere, or at least according to a Letterboxd list that I found it on. So if anybody has, I think it's called The Union of the North, if anybody has the hookup to The Union of the North, I would love to watch it.
So let's maybe say, if somebody is interested in seeing Lamb, it was produced by A24. So if you're a big fan of the stuff that A24 curates, you know, Lamb is probably worth checking out.
I would call it, I was going to say, I would call it actually like a first cow with horror elements, if that helps anybody. If you are an A24 fan, First Cow has some very similar experiences within it. So I think you can kind of get behind that if you liked First Cow.
I think, oddly enough, if you enjoyed a film like Okja and are ready for something that is very, very quiet, but begs you to answer a lot of questions about yourself, you will enjoy Lamb.
Or for Uncle Boomy, who can recall his past lives fans out there, which I don't think there's a lot of you, but I know in like cult film circles it's well regarded, and I really liked it. So more recommendations. Just
I think in general, if you enjoy stories that are pastoral in nature with like a dash of folklore, like a very subtle dash of folklore, and are willing to kind of set aside the time. It's a relatively tight movie. It does feel incredibly slow, though, because it is so... I mean, it's slice of life in the way I think slice of life operates best, where it takes its time. There are these shots that really, really, really breathe. And it probably will leave you feeling a little bit unsettled and a little bit uncomfortable, but that is entirely, I think, the point of the movie.
Yes, definitely.
Also, the CGI is fucking phenomenal.
Oh my god,
they
fantastic.
did an amazing job.
Yeah. There's moments where she's a little uncanny valley, but I think that's just because a sheep person would
She's
never
a baby with a sheep head.
Yeah. But
and this wasn't like a massive blockbuster movie, but
it was picked for cons, if that means anything for anybody to get if that gets anybody to watch it.
The other movie we saw, I saw it yesterday and you saw it today.
I sure did.
Was The Last Duel.
Yeah.
Now, Teese, I have to ask you, how did you feel about that runtime?
So, you know me, I'm a firm believer of the Tight 90 gang, but I think this could have been, there are moments where I was like, God damn, shut up, but I think for what it was trying to say and what it was trying to do, it made total sense that it was this long, and I thinking back on it, I don't think there's necessarily anything that really should have been edited out. So I'm allowing this movie to have the 2.5 hour runtime that it had. I was 1 out of 8 people in the theater, and there was a couple having a full ass fight during the previews. And I was like, and I was in the back, because unfortunately I'm a back row sitter, which is mortifying to a lot of people, but I love sitting in the back row. The farthest I can go back, I sit back there. And
I don't want anyone behind me when I'm viewing a movie.
Fair.
I don't want to be snuck up upon.
I like to sit and see everything. And I know when film editors watch their final cuts, and when sound designers watch their final cuts, they sit in the middle, the 2/3 in type deal. No. All the way in the back for me, baby. You can't do it. My mom has always been a back sitter. I've always been a back sitter. In college, all my friends were front sitters, and I hated it.
You. But, okay, I'm not going to roast. And listen, I don't necessarily have a problem. But if somebody tells me, we got to sit in the front row, I will question them if other options were available.
It feels disgusting. I hate it. I can't see.
I think also because we're tall.
Yeah. I went to a concert on Saturday, and on Saturday, and one on Monday, too. And I purposely, not this Saturday, past whatever, I purposely went to the side so people could see around my big ass head. Felt good. Felt organic. But Cas, this your turn. Time to talk about the plot of The Last Duel.
So The Last Duel is about a woman during the 14th century who is married off to a man who has this persistent rivalry with another member of the court. And you see the story played out. I didn't know that it was going to go like this. You see the story played out through their 3 respective perspectives, where first you get Jean de Carouge and his perspective of everything, and then you have, I keep forgetting Adam Driver's character's name.
Jacques de Gris.
Yes,
something like that.
Jacques de Gris.
Close enough.
His perspective, and then finally, in the 3rd chapter, we get Marguerite's perspective. And the entire fixing point of this story is that she was raped, and it is a question of the events that led up to that and the events that then follow that. So what happens in the movie that I think was genius, and I was a little wary of this movie because I get wary of anything talking about the perspective of men when it comes to the rape of women for understandable reasons. And I was genuinely very worried that this movie was going to be like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's response to the Me Too movement in a really disgusting way.
I mean, the 3rd person who wrote it was a woman, so
exactly.
That's how you knew. I was like, all right, I'll be okay.
Yeah, they pointedly brought her on because they knew that they couldn't explore a woman's perspective, which, wow, you love to see marginal growth from a man who had to be told at the dinner table by his daughter that he couldn't say the N-word. Jesus Christ.
Wasn't it the F word? I thought it was the F slur. You're thinking of Mark Wahlberg, who said the N-word.
Yes, I'm confusing them. Matt Damon
they all look the
Wahlberg
same.
are the same man. Yeah. Okay. So.
Sorry, Matt Damon Cinematic Universe. I should do a bonus episode on that.
Please do, because I want to learn about it.
Oh, I will tell you all about it.
So the movie is split into chapters, and the chapter headers are The Truth According to Jean de Carouge, The Truth According to Jacques Degree, and then the third and final chapter is The Truth According to Marguerite. And when that title screen fades out, the words of the truth lingers and blots on the screen, which I really appreciated, and I think it's really important that her story be the last told, so that there is that the viewer leaves and it's her events that we are left with most pertinently. But what happens throughout the movie is, as you switch perspectives, you see how their ideas of what has played out totally changes. So in Jean de Carouge's idea, he saved the life of Jacques. Whereas when you get to Jacques' chapter, he's the one who saved Jean's life. You see all these little things about these petty little arguments and how the tone is entirely changed. You know, Jean builds himself up as this like loving, doting husband who always listens to his wife and appreciates her. And then, you know, you find out when it comes to her perspective that he is abusive at best, that he dismisses her at every turn, that when she brings forth the allegations of what Jacques has done to her, Jean puts her in a chokehold and demands to know if she's telling the truth. And all of this leads up to Jean de Carouge demanding a duel to the death with Jacques via a joust that will then turn into combat in front of the King of France. And the costuming in the story. I love a good sword movie. And listen, I'm not necessarily interested in 100% accuracy in costuming in films, as long as it is evocative and appropriate of what it is meant to be. And so, like, don't come for me because Adam Driver has buckles on his armor. That's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. But it was so much better than I was expecting. I was 100% expecting to walk in and for it to be just like a sword movie, and then it wasn't.
It reminded me actually of one of my favorite books, so I was pretty delighted.
Yeah?
It reminded me of A Poison Past by Steven Bernardeschi, which I've probably suggested on the pod before. I actually read it for a history.
I don't think you've ever mentioned
it. I read it for a History 101 class, oddly enough, and it is a nonfiction book because, surprisingly, when I am not reading stuff for the podcast, Dune, you could say Dune, chances are I'm actually reading nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction, and it is a book that is the accounts of a court case. I had to think of the word court case. The court case of a woman whose husband died during their supper, and it was a combination of, well, did this young bride do it? Was it the actual food itself and it was a natural death? Was it an accidental poisoning? So it is a book about the case and what happens to her, and it just goes through the medieval court system and how we did, in fact, even in, I think this was supposed to be set in the 1300s, we did have coroners and we did have doctors and we did have priests and we did have lawyers and all this stuff. And I thought, and it has surprisingly a happy ending. It shows that women had autonomy at this time, that women were able to actually be protected by law and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites, and I think it's like definitely a hidden gem for people who are into more of an exploration of that kind of stuff. And I liked it, so it's a fave. So I had a good time when I was watching. I was like, wow, Poison Past.
Also, the acting is phenomenal. I mean, I feel like
the acting was
saying when you've
really
got Jodie
good.
Comer in there, but I think the part that I really ended up appreciating more than anything was the acknowledgement of how coming forward with rape allegations so often hurts the victim further than it ever does the perpetrator. And the intersection, right, of Jacques trying to skirt accountability. And there's something that's really frustrating, and I mean earnestly frustrating, in an issue that we deal with still today, of the way people can engage in this behavior and genuinely think they've done nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That everything they did was right, that the other person was consenting. It's a good movie, but, obviously approached with heavy content warnings. It's difficult to watch, but not... You can tell that the scene is there because it has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that is the actual focal point of the movie. And unfortunately, it needs to be very clearly communicated to the audience that, no, she was attacked, she was raped. But it doesn't languish in that scene. It doesn't take delight in causing that character pain. Also, those jousting scenes are fucking incredible.
God, the jousting?
I just love jousting.
Wow, Cas and Teese go to medieval times.
I love medieval times, but every day I weep for the absence of a history show that was called Full Metal Jousting, which was a jousting competition, and I just loved to watch it. It only got one season, but it was good. Jousting is fascinating and terrifying.
I agree with all of these things. I thought it was really... Mr. Ridley Scott, he knows how to make them.
He really does.
He knows how to make them.
He's so good at atmosphere and landscapes.
Yeah, I thought it was impressive that even from a viewer's perspective, depending on what chapter it was, the lighting was even different, which I thought really blew me away. For instance, when Marguerite opens the door to let in Adam Driver, her home is darker. It's a darker space, and for Adam Driver in that chapter, for him in that moment, it was way brighter. It seemed more sunny. And even just the conversations, for instance, the thing that really struck me, I noticed, was there's a moment where the two men make up with each other and they shake hands, and one of them says for the good of the kingdom, no ill will, blah blah blah. And obviously in Matt Damon's chapter, he has himself remembering that he said it, and then in Adam Driver's chapter, Adam Driver's the one who said it. But then when you get to Marguerite's chapter, though she's there, you don't physically see who says it, you just hear it. And both of them have such a similar voice that it's ambiguous. You can't tell.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter for her because she's about to get told that she has to kiss this man. And I thought it was really, I think the small details and nuances in it,
just the kiss immediately in that scene, right? Of how that kiss actually operates, where in Jean's perspective, it is very chaste. In Jacques' perspective, she seeks after him again after this initial kiss. And then in her perspective, she's uncomfortable. She does it. And then Adam Driver moves in again after her. And she is taken aback by that.
Yep. I thought it was good. Also, the music choices were a little weird, though. Sometimes it's kind of huh.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I liked it.
Whoever was playing the King of France did a great job.
Oh my God. Who was that little man?
He did a phenomenal job.
He did a really good job.
Jonathan Groff, who?
Tasty. Did you consume any other media this weekend, Cas?
I watched the latest episode of What We Do in the Shadows, which was great.
Same.
Loved it very much.
Same.
I'm very excited for next week's episode.
Yes.
And there's another thing that we can kind of talk about that happened this week.
Yeah.
That I think we're both really excited
for.
November 5th, You Will Lose Us. If we just disappear from social media, we will be playing Animal Crossing New Horizons and also Animal Crossing Happy Home Horizons or whatever it's called. I don't remember. Oh, that direct was so good.
It was very tasty.
So and it was everything I wanted and more.
I went island hopping today, and within 8 tickets, I found one of my favorites. So one of my fabled villagers is coming home for Teese. So I'm back to playing Animal Crossing again. And I actually messaged one of my friends asking her what her turnip prices were. She's like, you have to stop. I was like, no, I won't actually.
Gotta know. Gotta fucking know. You need to make those bells.
I do. I sure do, because I only have about 4.5 million right now.
We are planning on doing some fun little island tours they'll go to the Patreon first, and then we'll probably release them on our YouTube channel. Yeah. But we just thought that would be something really fun to do, to show you what each of us is like, because I think we're two very different Animal Crossing players.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. We sure are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just do a fun little recap for people who don't care about Animal Crossing. This is what I put my mom through because she was sitting at the table with me while I was watching it. I went, Mom, I'm gonna put my headphones on and I'm gonna watch this, and I'm probably gonna make some expressions. I'm asking not to be interrupted. And she was like, okay. And she could not stop laughing at me.
My mom, when Animal Crossing first came out at the beginning of the pandemic, when the commercial for it would come on, my mom would be like, look, T, Animal Crossing. I'm like, Animal Crossing! Like, without even thinking about it. The disease is back. It's,
I watched the initial New Horizons Direct that came out shortly before the release of the game. Back to back nonstop to get me through my thesis.
You're so brave.
It was like, my roommate would walk out and she'd hear the music and she's like, you having a day? And I'm like, mm-hmm. She's like, how many times have you watched it so far today? I'm like, this is my 4th go through. And she's like, okay, you need anything?
Oh.
So the new Direct released, and we've been waiting for like a major content update for a while. A lot of people got quite spicy at the 300-hour mark on Animal Crossing because they burnt themselves out. It came out at the beginning of this pandemic that is still ongoing, and they sunk every amount of energy they could into it, and I don't blame them. I'm also one of those people, and then you get burnt out, which is totally natural. I don't agree with people who then turned around and were like, it's a bad game. And it's like, you have 500 hours logged, Jacob. Calm down. So it's kind of tapered off. You know, you get little content updates around the holidays, but this new Direct is a 2.0. So they've added a more robust farming mechanic. They have added cooking. They're adding new furniture items. They are adding a static, like, flea market location where you can have the vendors come and stay. I was very excited about that.
I'm so excited
Katrina's going to be in the game. It actually feels like it's adding a purpose to Harv's Island, so I'll go more regularly. But I do know that people love Harv's Island. Reese and Cyrus are back properly, which I'm also super excited about. And we can't forget the one we were anticipating, but not to this degree, was Mr. Brewster at the cafe again. I'm a little sad that he doesn't get his own building, but I do love how gorgeous it looks in the museum, and I think it will only add to the museum's atmosphere. Yeah. So we also get gyroids.
Those are my favorite. I actually cried when Captain came up on the screen.
Yeah.
I heard Captain's song and I immediately burst into tears.
Yeah.
I love Captain. And I really like the gyroids, and I'm really excited for those restaurant items because I have a second house in the game that I was making to look like this one Japanese restaurant in the city, and then I just never finished it. But now there's restaurant.
Well, now you get the exterior options too.
Yes. Oh, I'm so delighted. I'm so excited.
That doesn't even talk about how I'm going to destroy every single one of my villagers' little homes.
Everybody is gonna get just oh my god, everybody's just gonna get the worst house designs from me. I'm so excited.
You're not much of an interior decorator in Animal Crossing, or do you just want to troll your little villagers?
I just shove everything in there. Shove everything in there.
Oh no.
You'll see. You will see. Welcome to my house tour. Welcome
no.
to my house tour.
Welcome to Miley Cyrus Eyes time. But why don't we break it up in half, and Teese, you tell us about Hanahaki, and then I'll tell everyone about Alexandria's Genesis, which, ooh boy.
Let me just finish chewing.
Yeah, take your time. I'm sorry. I know this was an unpleasant time, but you're the one who put the Twizzler in your mouth.
I really wanted one. So, not to segue, but the concert I went to on Monday, there is a line in their newest song where they say, I can't remember the first line before it, but then they say, I'm puking up flowers. And me, Hanahaki disease, but obviously.
Yes.
Good. Shout out to our patrons, first of all, for giving us the goods, so to say. So, Hanahaki, for people who are unaware, is the concept that if you have kind of an unrequited love situation, you'll puke up flowers until the object of your affection either falls for you or you die. So, usually it kind of slowly grows, and the first thing you kind of puke up, I shouldn't say puke up, I should say like cough up in the situation.
Yeah.
You cough up is like a flower petal or two, maybe a little bit of pollen in your cough. I don't know. I've never read Hanahaki before. And then eventually, as it gets worse and worse and time passes and your love is growing stronger and stronger and it's still unrequited, it becomes full on flowers in heads, like flower heads, So this is probably the most popular fake disease in fandom spaces, I'm gonna say, from a fan fiction trope point of view, because obviously there's like fake diseases that people make up and stuff like that, but nobody really writes about fan fiction where I don't want to say have purple eyes because clearly somebody did, but like nobody doesn't make up a story where it's like, this is my fan fiction where Fred goes bald until Draco says he hates him. I don't even fucking know. I don't even think either of those characters interact in Harry Potter together. But like,
is there a character named Frank in Harry Potter?
I said Fred.
Oh.
Anyway.
Frank and George.
Frank and
Weasleys.
The twins. Frank and George.
Is Frank so much of an outrageous name as compared to Fred?
No,
I don't think so.
Not at all. No. Yeah, the final Weasley, Frank Weasley. Anyway.
And now that I've collected all the Weasleys, I will be able to purge the TERF agenda from these books.
Please do. So these plants usually will grow throughout your whole entire body, including your stomach and your lungs and sometimes even your hearts, which is why you will...
Hearts? Multiple.
Yes, we are now in Doctor Who terms. Fuck. It's one of these... Gotta make a supernatural joke now. Just complete the trifecta.
Sherlock, when you coming? Come on, buddy.
Come on. It's alcoholic. Fucked up putting my phone in the charger.
I am certain that there is Hanahaki fic for Sherlock.
There has to be.
For Supernatural.
There has to be.
And for Doctor Who. Sorry, I forgot the last one.
Confirmed for all of those.
Brave Tangled Dragons, y'all got Hanahaki fic?
Oh, they have to as well. They have to. They're just the same way how there are tattoo shop, flower shop AUs for everybody, and coffee shop AUs, there must be Hanahaki for everybody. Anyway, so the term originally comes from the Japanese words hana and hakimasu. Hana means flower in Japanese, while hakimasu means to throw up. I do know that hana means flower in Japanese, but I'm not sure about hakimasu. So if somebody who's more knowledgeable in Japanese, A, please don't yell at me for my pronunciation if I butchered it, and B, tell us if we're wrong, I guess, but it sounds pretty legit. And though this kind of comes not necessarily from 2009, a manga in 2009 called The Girl Who Spit Flowers by Naoko Matsuda came out. And I unfortunately couldn't find it anywhere to read, but that's kind of like the first mainstream experience we have with it. So even though The Girl Who Spit Flowers is not necessarily a new concept, because this did come out, it kind of created the issue of now suddenly plagiarism can come into concept with Hanahaki. So there's actually been a webcomic that has lost the possibility to win an award because it was about Hanahaki. So something to consider. Hanahaki has kind of existed in Asian fan spaces for a really long time, way before it has Western cultures, Western fan spaces. But the idea itself isn't new. Like I said, trope predates The Girl Who Spit Flowers, but its origins are currently unknown. If anybody has more information on that, I would love to hear about it. I wish I could read the original fic like the same way we did with Alpha Beta Omega.
If you have access to The Girl Who Spit Flowers, either in a printed copy or you are willing to scan it for us so that we can check it out, we would really love and appreciate
I also
that.
think it's not available in English. at all.
Well,
yeah.
if you speak Japanese.
Yeah, so, I mean...
Or if you're aware of fan translations as
yeah,
well.
if you are aware of fan translations, that'd be awesome. There is one that has a really similar name, so that usually pops up in search. So, in some versions of Hanahaki, because it is usually an angst trope, you can actually get these plants and flowers removed from your body. However, you usually in the situation, that means that the consequence is that you no longer have feelings for this person. Sometimes in some fics, the person, if they get it removed, will never possibly love again properly. That you may forget all of your memories of the person that originally was the object of your affection, so on and so forth. And I don't know, man. I think I'd rather lose my crush than choke on flowers until I die. But that's just me. But Cas, have you read any Hanahaki before? Do you have any opinions on Hanahaki?
Yeah, I've read some Hanahaki. I find it really interesting as a trope for a variety of reasons. And a lot of that comes down to how authors choose to explore it. And I think the interest in any sort of trope is how it is approached differently by different writers, at least from my perspective. So I think with Hanahaki, what you can chiefly get that I think is maybe the more compelling is the question of how I don't want to say infected. I'm going to say, let's say let's call him patient zero, maybe, or the afflicted. The person afflicted with Hanahaki, right, is in a situation where their motivation can become very quickly to manipulate the person who is the object of their affection, right? Because essentially it's either you die, you undergo a surgical procedure, which in some writing is invasive and in some is totally non-invasive, or you die, right? So you want this person to return your affections. Hanahaki is inherently a very selfish concept that seeks the gratification of the afflicted person over, potentially the comfort or happiness of the object of their affection. And, obviously that's written sometimes with characters who undergo surgical procedures or hide things until, the very last possible moment because they don't want to burden the object of their affection. I think that's something that's really interesting to play with. I think the other thing that frequently comes up with Hanahaki and why it tends to dominate MLM writing spaces is because there can be an element of outing that's involved that a lot of writers like to explore, of this concept of a character with either they are aware that they are, queer, or they are denying it and not ready to kind of come to terms with it when they become infected with Hanahaki for attractions to another man. And I'm not saying this doesn't happen in WLW fics. It does. There's a lot more of a sample size for MLM fic than there is for WLW fic, which is a topic for another day. Probably a series for another day. But you deal with this issue then of a male character who has to very aggressively face or deny their queer love, right? Gays also fucking love flower language. I mean, we can just be honest about that. They love flower language, and Hanahaki offers you an opportunity to explore that in a very visceral way.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say, I think part of the charm, I think, for a lot of people is, in fact, flower languages. And the funny thing is I don't care about flower languages either. So, 2 strikes for me, unfortunately.
I think too, right, the visual of these beautiful flowers that are literally sprouting forth from your body, that your body is in and of itself becoming a garden. And there are Hanahaki fics which handle it differently. So there are ones where, it's pretty located in the stomach and you just cough it up or whatever, or located in the lungs rather. And then there are fics where these flowers will just subsume the entire body. They start to sprout and grow through veins. They kind of come up through the skin. There's difficulty if, the flower you happen to be afflicted with is roses as opposed to anything else because they're sharp and spiny, or, there's a potential to explore flowers that are poisonous to imbibe or consume, or flowers that the object of the affection absolutely hates or is even allergic to. So I think Hanahaki provides a lot of really interesting little moments that help further build character, which is kind of what fan fiction is all about, is exploring these what ifs of the characters more than the story of the original property itself, which I find really compelling. There's also, I know, some Hanahaki fics where the idea is the more that person's affection grows, or the more they think positively of their affection, the worse and more painful the affliction becomes.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like a linear time progression.
Look at you.
So.
You know so much about this.
I didn't even do any research on it. I've just read Hanahaki. I think the visuals can be really compelling, and with the right writer, can be really visceral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of that way with any trope. It's, you know, it's a tool or it's a trope, and just like ABO, it's more or less compelling depending on how it's contextualized.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I think there's a lot of appeal in it. Like we were saying earlier, like unrequited love is really popular. Flower languages is really popular. Tragic relationships is really popular. Outing, like you were saying, like all of these things build up to make a really good concept. And it's just like a bunch of things that a lot of people look for in a fan fiction combined with a supernatural element, which I think a lot of fan fiction readers do want a little bit of a supernatural element involved, especially when a series doesn't usually have it involved. I think there's kind of like that fun appeal where you could like kind of play in the sandbox with it a little bit. And
well, it's that magical realism, right?
Once again,
the same that we have with Lamb.
Magical realism. So I like, trust me, I see it, I get it. It's just I don't think it's for me. I think there's a question and a conversation to be had too about why so many queer narratives that, you know, especially young people are writing, fixate around unrequited love. And I'm sure that's a thing that, you know, if you're an allo-romantic individual, you've probably experienced, or you've had a crush on someone that, you know, you either are convinced is unrequited, or you know to be unrequited, or you don't feel deserving of that love. And I think what I am profoundly affected by pretty persistently in fan fiction is the ability for people to explore and work through their own feelings, or sort of project their feelings out into a piece of media to try and understand them. And so I think Hanahaki is a very beautiful reflection of that in a lot of ways, and it reminds me a bit of how in Ghibli movies, tears aren't drawn the way they actually appear. They are drawn the way you feel them, which is why they are so big and hot and like overflowing and swelling the face. Hanahaki is very much that. It's how it feels to have this like this writhing, invasive presence inside of your body that on a surface level might seem pleasant, but can be so annoying and niggling and overwhelming in so many different ways that you just want it out of your body and you want it gone. And it's fighting at every opportunity to be out, to be presented, and to be seen. I think it's cool. Yeah. Glad you like it.
Yeah. I'm not like a massive fan, or like I don't actively seek out Hanahaki fic, but I check it out when it comes across my little browsing.
When it comes along, you take it. I hear that.
Now I want to talk about something stinky.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Alexandria's Genesis.
What's that?
So my first exposure to Alexandria's Genesis was on Tumblr sometime around 2013. And it was from a post that pretty much everyone saw that was made by The Pretty Choice. And that post read, Alexandria's Genesis, aka Violet Eyes, a genetic mutation. When someone is born with Alexandria's Genesis, their eyes are blue or gray at birth. After 6 months, the eyes begin to change from their original color to purple, and this process lasts 6 months. During puberty, the color deepens to dark purple, a deep purple or royal purple, or a violet blue color, and remains that way. It does not affect the person's eyesight. Those who have this mutation will never grow any facial, body, pubic, or anal hair, not including hair on their head, on their ears, noses, eyebrows, and eyelashes. Women also do not menstruate, but are fertile. It's a too good to be true kind of disease.
Yeah.
So it's an internet myth regarding these like quote-unquote perfect human beings whose eyes turn purple during infancy, and posts about Alexandria's genesis actually date back to about 2005 at least, though the quote-unquote disease has its origins much further back than that. Versions of the myth tend to swap between infants being born with purple eyes and those who turn purple during infancy. Those purple eyes, like described above, are not so pale blue they appear purple, a la Elizabeth Taylor's eyes, or even like a pale purple eyes that we see actually occurring in humans with albinism or leucistic piebaldism. It's not like this non-pigment blue and the red from the blood and the cornea, appearing to be purple. It's a lot of times like this super vibrant aubergine or lilac, or even neon in some edits, because every image you see of Alexandria's genesis is almost always a close-up on the human eye, and it is like this unnatural purple color. And purple like that doesn't really occur in nature super duper frequently.
Oh.
This disease also is pretty racist and fatphobic in its origins. The quote-unquote perfect human beings with Alexandria's genesis have pale skin and are quote-unquote well-proportioned, and they don't gain any weight. Apparently, they also produce less bodily waste, a la they don't poop or pee as much. So individuals with Alexandria's genesis can also supposedly live to be well over 100 years old, between 130 and 170. The thing is that Alexandria's genesis is fake. A lot of people genuinely believed it was real and also claimed to have it. It actually comes from a piece of Daria fanfiction that was written by someone named Cameron Aubernon in 1998.
Daria fanfiction.
And in 2014, Cameron Aubernon released an entire write-up about the truth and creation of Alexandria's genesis to their Tumblr, which we are going to read. So, Teese, how about we alternate this, where I'll read a portion, and then the picture will happen, and then you'll read a portion. Sound
Okay,
good?
yeah, that's fine.
Cameron writes, way back in 2011, a bit of Daria fanfiction I wrote sometime between 1998 and 1999 had taken on a life of its own over the years since leaving the fandom, resulting in its appearance on my Tumblr dashboard in mid-December of that year. After the shock wore off, I had no option but to come out as the creator of the fictional post-human alien genetic construct Alexandria's Genesis. Figuring that doing so on Tumblr wasn't going to be enough to attempt, emphasis on attempt, to set the record straight, I turned to my own fashion blog to shed more light on this subject. Since then, the post has become the most read on my old blog, 33 Avenue McKellen. McKellen is no longer my last name, by the way, it's Aubernon now. Much to my disappointment, however, most who came to my blog through that post didn't bother to go any further. Though I am moving forward with a new blog, 33 Avenue McKellen's final post was made on Halloween of 2013, I figured I would repost the most read version of all time here on Tumblr as both a tribute and testament to its surprising success among both the violet-eyed truthers and the realists, and as a way to ensure that AG will not take away from the new endeavor. Read, share, laugh, love, but always remember, Alexandria's Genesis is not, was not, and barring the advent of post-humanity, hint hint my little violet-eyed truthers, shall never be real, no matter how much you choose to believe. You will always be wrong.
Nearly 15 years ago, circa 1998, I was a huge fan of Daria, MTV's favorite high school cynic. I had also discovered fanfiction then, and when I found some related to my favorite show, I wanted to leave my mark. I just didn't know my mark would be the size of a logic bomb crater. On the night of 15th December 2011, something I created under a male pseudonym when I was 19 turned up on my Tumblr dashboard. Something that I made up as a silly backstory for my two Daria-based Mary Sues, fanfiction characters who are perfect in every manner possible, and then some. Something that, in turn, was a projection of my personal gender identity and body issues that I was starting to confront in my 20s. This something, in the 15 years since I first wrote it, had taken a life of its own. This something was Alexandria's Genesis, a fictional, post-human alien genetic mutation I created in order to make my Mary Sues, one male, one female, more special. Alas, AG has also evolved into children of the violet ray fodder, all to the point that some individuals legitimately believed that not only was it real, but that they actually had the condition. An individual by the name of Cognized took their time to explain why it wasn't, an explanation that was reblogged by Sex Gender Body, which I then read. My reaction to AG's evolution from weak plot device to new age idiocy was of shock, being appalled, and kind of bemused outrage that could only come from a travesty like this. I then wrote a response outing myself as the woman behind the curtain, but I don't think it's enough. The short version, Alexandria's genesis is not, was not, and will never be a real thing. It was a silly little backstory for someone's entertaining first draft. The long version, come inside to see how this sausage was made.
Let's begin with the genesis story of AG. An English girl born before the Renaissance began in Sicily, circa 1330s, developed violet eyes from her original blue shortly after birth. Her parents believed Satan had cursed their child, but the local priest confirmed it to be a sign from God regarding a mythological spirit people who had first appeared in ancient Egypt thousands of years earlier, only to vanish from history after migrating north. The entirety of that opening is based on a mix of speculative fiction, regular fiction, and historical fact. Europe was still in the Middle Ages then. It was a period that laid the foundation for the witch trials during the early modern period. Pope John the 22nd allowed for the prosecution of witchcraft as a form of heresy in 1320, for example. Blue eyes turning violet shortly after birth? Burn the heretic, and make it a plot device. Spirit people and ancient Egypt. I was a fan of Art Bell at the time. His guests included Egyptologists who believed that pyramids would predict the end of the world and were markers for alien ships. Ladies and gentlemen, the spirit people who turned up in Egypt thousands of years before the events of 29 April 1329 in a flash of light, no less, Cylons. Alexandria Augustine, the trope namer / codifier, alliteration, baby. My Mary Sues were named Raven Duchovny and Rebecca Anderson. For bonus points, Raven was actually a male character who had a lot in common with Andrzej Pejic. That's right, males can have Alexandria's genesis too, and they'll probably look like an androgynous male model. Probably. The discovery of the gene in 1968 seemed like another good plot device at the time. C'est la vie.
Here's where we enter transhuman posthuman theory. Let's break it down, shall we? Blue-gray eyes that change to violet within a year after birth. Your mileage may vary regarding changes in iris color after birth. As for violet being an option only online or if you're an albino, which leads to shimmering, almost metallic pale skin resistant to the sun. 1. Stephanie Meyer owes me money of the sparkly emo vampire wuss kind. 2. Only if you're a skin job. No facial or body hair other than what is there at birth, head hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes. Meet the disorder known as complete androgen insensity syndrome, also known as CAIS, testicular feminization, TFM. Lack of periods in female, see above, and polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. Dark brown or black hair, I'm a brunette, that's all I got. It's been 15 years after all. Highly evolved immune systems that are resistant to every known disease. I would only say if you're a skin job, but not even machines are immune to viruses. Slowed aging, skin job, or through a very low calorie diet. Lifespan of 130 to 170 disease. Lifespan of 130 to 170 years. Wait about 20 years, barring a singularity or World War III. Perfect vision. Just something I throw in. Well-proportioned bodies. I was into astrology then. Really into it. I read that Taurus-born people were basically put together by Goldilocks so that everything was just right. Never overweight, partial lipodystrophy, wishful thinking. Found only in females, mostly white. There must be some kind of way out of here. Children are carriers, said the Joker to the thief. Mutation remains active, increases in strength over generations. Nanotechnology, baby. No, just something I made up off the top of my head again. Lack of waste product? RoboCop, though he did not produce baby food from his back, if I understand correctly. He did eat, right? Dominance of mutation in biracial children, part 1. Idiocy, deluxe, unintentional racism. This also means that some new age fanatics might be racist themselves if they believe AG is real. I'm just guessing, though. Dominance of Mutation in Biracial Children, Part 2, the 1997 book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies by Jared Diamond states that the reason why Eurasian, including North Africa, where Egypt is located, hint, hint, civilization survived and conquered all others was in part due to the east-west orientation of Eurasia, as well as its size. This provided numerous advantages not readily available elsewhere, Europe being the ultimate beneficiary. Thus, having AG head up from Egypt vanishes, then re-emerge in Europe, in the environment described in Diamond's book, and finally taking upon itself to manifest in white people prior to leaping upon biracial descendants while ignoring people of color overall. A, still sounds awful, and B, seemed like just one more thing to throw into the blender.
Why did Alexandria's Genesis go viral? AG was overall a silly plot device that also comes off as unintentionally misogynistic and racist, but somehow escaped the confines of a now deceased Daria fanfiction site into the wild plains of the internet. I can't explain how this happened or who first thought this was the real thing, but the elephant in the room has a question. Why is the only known document regarding a post-human alien genetic mutation posted on a fanfiction website? If I wanted to post this as a real document for New Agers to swallow hook, line, and sinker, I would have just created some lame GeoCities website and been done with it. Maybe you know. Anyway, there you have it. Alexandria's Genesis is simply a bad mashup of Daria, Art Bell, Twilight, witchcraft, and Cylon skin jobs adopted by New Agers and others who should know better, but don't and won't. Thank you, Internet. Thank you, Tumblr. P.S. It turns out that I tried to expand upon Alexandria's Genesis in 2001 under the pseudonym Stephanie Acela. I divided the post-human alien mutation into two types, type 1 matching what I wrote in Purple Eyes, while type 2 showed none of the aesthetic characteristics of type 1. Just scroll down to the glossary section entitled Few More Things About the New Era to learn more. Also, I never did write that follow-up essay explaining the two types of AG. That was when I walked away from fanfiction for the next 11 years until I discovered My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Thankfully, nothing I write for that show will be mistaken for fact by the violet-eyed truthers. Wow.
Wow.
So those are the origins of Alexandria's Genesis. I think it's genuinely hysterical when something like this pops out. I wonder how much of alpha, beta, omega fanfiction has helped to indirectly spur our current sort of incel culture of alpha, beta, sigma males, and how much those things have unintentionally aided and abetted each other.
That's a really good idea. I don't know. I never thought about that.
I mean, at the heart of it, they all come back to a study that was debunked about the behavior and social structure of wolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Alexandria's Genesis is this odd little case study in how, let's be honest, teenagers, some young adults, will often latch on to things on the internet to help set themselves apart, a la, I'm not like other girls.
Mm-hmm.
We see it now resurging with this idea of pick-me girls, and at the end of the day, women are pretty constantly and brutally compared to and pitted against one another, and so it's really understandable why they will then sort of latch on to things like this to say, well, I'm not like other girls, I am, more worthy or more deserving of being coveted or interested in, and it's a lot of internalized misogyny that weaves its way through. And I think Alexandria's Genesis also very clearly shows how we get into media, don't think twice about it, and end up reproducing and creating our own concepts that are inherently flawed, that carry the issues of the media we've been inspired by in having those same kernels that flourish then into racism, misogyny, sexism, fatphobia. I mean, all of it. It's a lot.
It is. And let's be real. I don't think anybody, like something like that, I don't think anybody intended necessarily to be racist, so to say, or fatphobic for that matter. It just was something that in their mind, they continuously have been told what can be quote unquote considered the perfect being, the perfect concept. And it ends up always translating into that, which is a clearly a racism and a fatphobia issue. However, it's the overall, I think, just learned experience that we have from pop culture. And I think that in turn kind of comes with, you can follow that back to ABO. I feel like you can talk about how, well, why is it so desirable to have someone who's domineering and controlling and take care of you, and somebody should be submissive? Like, what is the point that because you happen to have these sexual organs you should be essentially bred? Like, there's a lot of unpack and discuss in a lot of these situations. The same way how we look at creators and we're like, oh, we get why this person sucks, but also we need to talk about like what led them to be a person that did suck. It's a chicken and egg for a lot of situations like this, I feel like. And especially,
you can't divorce these things from their context. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Like okay, let's bring it back to the very beginning of the episode, right? Is that the context of Lamb as a movie is probably very different for Icelandic, Swedish, just Norwegian viewers in general, as it is for an American audience.
Definitely.
Or The Last Duel as a movie would be very, very different if it had been released even 10 years ago.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
The ideas and conversations that happen around media, including fan fiction, because fan fiction is also media, are things that all influence and impact them. And I thought about it while you were just saying something about people being shitty, but it's like, I think the real injustice of separating creator from art, right, is that I think we immediately move to pick apart the human being because we ourselves are human and want to understand them. But I don't think we sit enough with the idea of picking apart the work itself. And so I see that a lot with Harry Potter right now, where people want to pick apart all of J.K. Rowling's actions. But there's an equally valid and important conversation to be had about the underlying text of Harry Potter. And yes, some people are talking about it, but J.K. Rowling is the one who holds most of the power in that conversation. And I understand why. I do understand that she has significant monetary and political power that we do need to be worried about, and that she continues to push propaganda and ideas that are very dangerous and very harmful. But there are also ideas in Harry Potter that we need to deconstruct. You know, there's antisemitism, there's gender essentialism, there's a lot of just like fascist eugenics stuff happening in Harry Potter that we need to be talking about with the young individuals who are reading them, to make that accessible to them so that they do learn critical reading, so that they don't go on the internet and learn about Alexandria's Genesis and make it a part of their identity.
Yeah. That's all I can say. Yeah.
So, thank you so much for listening until the end of the episode. I know it was a little bit of an unconventional one, but we hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun recording it just now. If you want to find more out about our podcast, you can check out our website. That's authorsnotepod.com, and you can find us on Twitter at authorsnotepod. We're pretty much everywhere across the internet at that. It helps us out so much if you leave us a review or you leave us a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, you know, hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that bell icon and make sure you smash that subscribe button.
Stop.
You know, have a good time. Join the family.
Shut up.
Or no, I will not be silenced. No. Or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps more people find the show, or recommend it to somebody in your life who you think would enjoy it. You can support us on Ko-fi and Patreon if you feel like throwing a couple bucks your way. We do fun bonuses over on Patreon all the time, and we've got lots of content over there. There's also some free stuff on Patreon, so even if you don't want to throw some cash money our way, which is totally understandable, there is some free stuff there that you can check out, and you can find the link to that on our website and in the show notes below. My name is Cas, and you can find me pretty much everywhere across the internet at Valhethella. That's VALHETHELLA. Teese, where can people find more of you at?
You can find me on most places as Vicuña. That's VICUNAD. If you liked our theme music, that was by James Wayulo, and you could find him on Bandcamp under James Y. Cas, who did our cover art?
Our cover art was done by the wonderful and incredible Nyaliest. You can find her on Twitter at Nyaliest. It's Nyalliest. Teese, you must ask me a question.
Cas, what's something you wish that had a phantom?
I think the stems of pumpkins are undervalued as a decorative element in pumpkin carving.
Yeah.
We lop them off and we don't do anything with them. I think you need to use them. I think you need to make that little penguin pumpkin. Or, just appreciate a pumpkin stem. I think they're really cool.
Pumpkin. Yeah.
They've got great texture.
Yeah.
Until next time, wash your hands, be safe, be conscientious of the people around you. Enjoy fanfiction critically. Bye!
Bye!